I locked the phone. All right, we've got it running. We'll see if a few people jump in, but um, I think we got the sound all figured out. We should have everything figured out for this episode, episode 10. We have paranormal investigator Aman Berry and his colleague Sadhu with us. Very knowledgeable, studied in the field. I think it'll be a good conversation, so I'm excited to talk to him.
Likewise.
Very good. So let's see. Let's make sure that we've got the volume good here. How's it going, guys? Can you guys hear? Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
I can hear you good too.
All right. And then how about on the video? Can you guys hear Aman and Sadhu?
Oh, we got people in the. We're live, aren't we?
Yep.
That's how it works.
All right. Looks like they can hear us. So we'll go ahead and get started. We appreciate you guys coming on tonight. We've had quite a few episodes in the past, and I've let everybody know that we're I'm working behind the scenes to help with the situation. And I thought, what better opportunity than to have you guys come on and chat with us a little bit about your story, and then we can talk about JB's situation as well. So
that sounds great.
Great. If you guys want to get started, introduce yourself, and then you can kind of start with I guess when you got into the field, and we can go from there.
Okay. I think I'm just gonna let my colleague Sadhu here start with that, and then I'll formulate my answer. That sound good?
Perfect.
Yeah. So my name is Sadhu, and I have quite a presence online. I've done a lot of other podcasts and radio shows, and what has kind of brought me to have my first experiences. I'm a Thai shaman, by the way. That's what I do by trade. But what brought me into that role originally was when I was really young. I had a lot of paranormal experiences where I was being attacked by, these unseen forces in my room as a young child. I think the first started when I was around 11 or 12, and it kind of just started to ramp up in intensity. There were points in the middle of the night where my bed would actually levitate and lift off of the ground, and I was so terrified that I would just pull the covers over my head, and I could feel and hear this humming type of, like vibration kind of noise. And there were a few times where I would try to leave my door open and the door would slam closed. And so I kind of got creative, and I didn't know now. Oh, I didn't know then what I knew now. So one of the things that actually worked for me was I took an iron hammer and I propped it in between the door to try to keep it from slamming closed, because when the door was closed, more things would happen. Iron has special qualities. We'll get into that later. And so one night I kind of screamed to my mother. I was being held down, and my mother came in the room, and my mother saw the bed levitating, and she saw, I believe, what I saw too, which was this shadowy being that was hovering over me. And she just had this look on her face of pure shock. She shut the door and she walked away. And
I can imagine that was quite a scene to walk into. Yeah.
But what ended up happening after that was, because she was in such a strong state of cognitive dissonance with what she had witnessed, and she could not believe that that was real, she actually had me committed to a mental institution for a couple years in my early teens, from about like 14 to almost 16. I spent a fair amount of time in mental institution, and that didn't help, obviously. And later, my grandmother on my father's side, who is a curandera, So like a Mexican white witch of Corendismo. She kind of taught me certain things like lumpia and like these folk traditions, and kind of explained to me a little bit more about spiritual stuff. That opened my mind a bit. But it wasn't until I had kind of briefly met this monk at a temple in Central Texas that kind of like got me really prompted to explore more. And then I ended up meeting um, a paranormal investigative group, and I joined up with them in Washington. And that was where I experienced the most intense phenomena that I have ever experienced in my life. And it's crazy because I've seen so many wild things since then, but nothing has trumped what that case was. And there was a young lady who got possessed, and I mean, her eyes, they got wide, like very, very large, and were glossy black. Her cheekbones were actually like morphing and contorting in a way that is just not possible with the physical human anatomy. And she actually crab walked, I am not joking, up the freaking wall. And
Wow.
and she, how is a very good question, right? But
Yeah.
in and out of those bouts is when she said, in my phone, and she told me to call this number. And she was kind of coming in and out, right, of this state of possession, and then kind of like screaming for help. And then in and out of the state of possession and screaming for help. And then she had me call who we are talking on the phone with now, Aman.
Hello.
And that was when I first met Aman and started to train and learn under him. And so I'll just kind of let him go from there.
Okay.
Pretty
Well,
pretty
yeah,
wild where the world can take you,
one
right,
of,
guys?
I gotta give him props. He's one of the most interesting and unique voices in the paranormal that I've met. I've met a lot of people. So you should all subscribe to his channel. What's your channel again?
Just look up Sadhu on YouTube and you'll find me.
I went ahead and spelled that out in the title.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I went ahead and spelled that out in the title for you guys, but it's SADHUDAH space DAH. I'll put it in the description after the live. I'll go ahead and put the links to the channels in the description after the live for us.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. So I will dovetail off what Sadhu was just talking about, but I'll play catch up to that point and then kind of tell the rest of the story.
Perfect.
I wasn't actually planning on telling the truth, the whole story, but I'm feeling called, and I feel like this is the time for me to tell my story a little bit. So when I was a child, when I was 11, 12, my father passed away in front of me. He had a massive heart attack, and shortly thereafter, paranormal phenomena started happening around my house. It was because he didn't cross over properly, long story short. His picture would fly off the wall at me. Doors would kick themselves open. Windows and blinds would draw themselves open. And I have a very distinct memory of being in 7th grade science class, having my science book open, but under the science book I had hidden a book I stole from the library on paranormal investigating. And that's when I started. It took me about 3 years because I was determined to clear out my own activity in my own house. So it took me about 3 years of learning how to do that. Shortly after that, I met my first teacher, Shar Sundust, Lakota shaman, very amazing person. I recommend everyone look into her. I became an exorcist in the Lakota tradition over the course of 4 years. And ever since then, I have been using various methods through paranormal investigation, Reiki, Qigong healing, trauma release, hypnotherapy, NLP. All these methods I've been using to help my clients reduce and remove unwanted paranormal activity. So in my mid-20s, I'd had a couple cases under my belt already, which if you want more detail on, I'll be going into those more on my channel shortly. But by this point, I was a semi-accomplished investigator, but mentally I was not necessarily in the best state of mind. So I received a call at about, what was it, like 4 in the morning, if I remember. Was that right, Sadhu?
Yeah, I had no idea who you were, or if you would even believe what I was going to tell you in that moment.
Okay, I'm going to let Sadhu take it from here because he's honestly the better storyteller among us.
Well, I want to just interrupt real quick and say thank you guys for sharing the very personal experiences that you had that got you started. I know that those both kind of they weighed heavy on you, but hopefully it can inspire people to feel comfortable about sharing their experiences as well. So
we got to get rid of the stigma. I don't know who's listening, but whoever's listening, don't be ashamed of what you're going through. And you're not alone, right?
very true, and we try and spread that message as much as what we can. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, guys.
You're very welcome. So I'm gonna let Sadhu's honestly the better orator of the two of us. So why don't you tell the rest of the story?
So what ended up happening was, as she was kind of coming out briefly, her actual sentence was Sensei. In my phone, there's a man named Sensei, call him. And so I grab her phone, I'm like scrolling through the contacts, and in my mind, I'm just like, what do I even say? Like, is this guy even gonna believe me? Like, there's no way this is really happening right now. Like this is like movie stuff. Like, this isn't real. This isn't real life.
Right.
And I remember like waiting for myself to wake up, and the most terrifying part wasn't like the phenomena. It wasn't what was going on in itself, but it was realizing that I wasn't dreaming, that like this was actually real. And that was what terrified me the most. And I called Aman, and he kind of, it's like,
go ahead, tell the truth. Tell him the truth.
So he like answered the phone, and it was like an irritated voice, like, like, what do you want? And which is fair, like
4 in the morning.
4 in the morning.
Sure.
And so I was like, you don't know me, and you were in this girl's phone labeled as Sensei, and I kind of like explained a little bit of what was happening, and I was like, I don't know what you can do, I don't know who you are, but I was just told to call you. And it was at that moment, not only could you hear it in his voice, but you could feel the shift, and it was just like, okay, like, and then he just became very serious and invested, and was like, tell me exactly what's going on right now. And so I explained what was happening, and he gave me 2 choices. And this was kind of like, this was the road for me that was either, blue pill or red pill, Matrix style, and it was like, he told me, I can make this as if this was just a bad dream, and you'll always question what happened that night, but you'll move on with your life like nothing happened. And I'll take care of this right now. Or if you really want to help this girl and you want to be part of this, I'm willing to take you on and to answer all of the questions you've ever had about the paranormal if you can prove yourself here. And that option intrigued me. And so I said yes to the second option. And at that point, his honest answer was, he said sigils, research sigils, and then he hung up the phone.
I was kind of a jerk.
But
Back then, yeah.
there was something else happening there that I only found out from him. It was like 2 years later, which was, whether you believe in these things or not, there are certain concepts of projecting one's own consciousness and observing. And, some of you may be familiar with remote viewing or astral projection, things of those natures. And I was not aware at that time, but that's what he informed me later that he had done in that moment. So it was kind of like he was watching over the scene.
Uh-huh.
And what was interesting was, for 7 days, me and another person, the person who actually was running that paranormal investigation team at the time, he came over, and I mean, we tried, reading Psalms, and we tried, everything that we thought we knew could work, and what we knew was also very limited. We were in completely uncharted territory. And so we at one point he put, the guy that was with me, he put a silver cross necklace around her neck, and it actually blistered her skin. It physically burned her, like second-degree burns on her body, and she was screaming. And what was like really just so crazy about it was you could see like wisp of smoke coming off of the skin. It was actually like burning her lifetime.
Oh, wow.
And we actually had to take it off of her because it was causing her so much pain. She had tried to charge at me, and this lasted over 7 days, mind you.
Right.
And we were just burnt out and ragged. We tried taking her to a Catholic church, and when we brought her into the Catholic church, they were kind of dismissive at first, and I think there was a service going on actually, and then they told us to wait like in this waiting room, and then there was this like lady, like receptionist kind of lady, and she was just kind of, she didn't want to come near us. And so once the father comes out of the service just to see what was going on, she immediately starts, her voice changes. It's like a girl that's like 100 pounds soaking wet, like she's a tiny little thing, and her voice gets very, very deep, and she starts to say things about the priest that seem to be very personal in nature about his life. And we've never met this man.
Uh-huh.
And he was so taken aback by what she said that he backed himself into a corner and he started to pray. And he told the lady that was like the receptionist person, call 911 right now, call the police.
Oh,
so the police come, and there were like, 4 pretty decent sized dudes. And these police officers had even made a comment when she had like lunged at them. They were trying to like, I guess, kind of do wellness check, but she had like physically lunged at them, and they were trying to subdue her. And, there were like 2 cops on one of her arms, and she just flung them, and they went several feet. And she was just kind of throwing them off like it was nothing. And they had even made a comment. They were like, man, she's really strong for her size. And so like, they finally like subdued her, and where this all kind of wrapped up and came into a conclusion was they, basically there was an involuntary mental hold on her at the hospital. And while she was there, Aman actually visited her, and upon visiting her and leaving, she was relieved of her possession, and the entity had never came back. And we checked up on her since then. To this day, we check up on everyone.
Sure.
And it was wild. That was my very first case.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's like a strap on your seatbelt kind of moment there, right? It's
it was really crazy. And we've had a couple cases like that. Now's not necessarily time to go too much into the details about every case we've been on.
Right.
But like I was saying, like we were talking about, there are patterns to behavior and phenomena of entities. So, but I'll wait till you're ready to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can't imagine. It probably had to feel, like you said, like a movie, going from that first experience in that bedroom to 7 days of just pure exhaustion. I can't imagine the relief that you had once you found out that it was all done, and being able to make those calls and find out that everything is still okay has to be a very rewarding feeling.
I mean, that's kind of why I keep doing this, because I'll never forget, in that room and during those days, the 2 biggest feelings that just pervaded my entire consciousness and was just the whole of my reality was terror and confusion.
Uh-huh.
I didn't understand what was going on, and I was absolutely terrified. And every time I go and I help somebody, that is one thing that I keep in mind, is how I felt in that experience.
Right, me too.
Those kind of feelings have a tendency to imprint on a person, I imagine.
Yeah.
Probably something that's you can pretty easily remember those those feelings that have that you've gone through.
And it also helps us to relate to our clients, though, because when someone explains to me with fear in their eyes what they're going through, I remember that fear in my own eyes.
Right.
So
Right. There aren't very many people that say, I understand, and it's like I might have empathy, where I or sympathy, but not necessarily empathy, where you can put yourself in their shoes and really know exactly what they're going through. That's people. I think there's a lot of trust that can be bestowed upon someone when they know that you truly do understand what they're going through.
and we do, and we're very sensitive about confidentiality with our clients.
Of
So if
course.
anyone out there wants to reach out to me, my email is cfooamonberry@gmail.com, and I will be confidential. I won't say nothing to no one.
I'll be happy to put that in the description as well in case anyone needs to reach out. I think our top priority with doing this is obviously helping JB's situation, but helping anyone that happens to come across this as well. It's important that they
We'll help
understand
anyone,
that
right,
there's
Sadhu?
people there.
Yep. And I feel like, one of the things that's kind of worth talking about is kind of demystifying some of the aspects of the paranormal, because a lot of people are like, well, how can these things exist? How can they prey on us? How can they do the things they do? I mean, those are valid questions, right?
Right.
So, I'll start this off, and I'll kind of let Aman, elaborate more with the science. I come from more of a shamanistic animism type of background, and I also do use the components of science as well within my investigatory means. But I kind of like to split things with Aman, and I kind of take, a certain side, and he takes the other side.
Sure.
So when we talk about ki, prana, mana, energy, the chakras, meridians, all that crazy stuff, all these terms, right, that we hear about, we're actually talking about a complex energy body that fuels the physical body. And I'm going to talk more about Vladimir Poponin's research, but Vladimir Poponin's, experiment had taught us that we have an energy body capable of existing and operating outside of the limits of physical containment. And that's just wild, right? Because one of the things that he had tested was when human DNA was removed in this experiment that he performed, the photons remained in communication with the DNA. And that means that the physical matter can be absent and a bioenergetic connection can still be maintained because it's working with the greater energy field with which all matter is connected to. And using this knowledge is actually really important here with like JB's situation, because it can help explain residual hauntings, imprint of energy on a land that turns sour, holy spots in the world, why people can sense presences without being able to see it, ghosts, demons, all these things, because they are composed of energy. And that's why we can interact with these energy fields of other living beings and physical matter, because they're manipulating the photons within a specified field to create a specific effect. And the last thing I'll say on this before I let Aman take over and make sense of this jargon I just threw out is, while these things seem otherworldly, they're merely following the laws of physics and the principle of energetic exchange. If enough energy is condensed, those photons become more visible, and this explains why we can see manifestations of ghosts sometimes. And I'll because I could go on and on.
Yeah,
I will say, if you don't mind, real quick, I wanted to.
In the actual like the resource I want everyone to look up on YouTube, it's totally free. The Science of Miracles by Greg Braid. It's an hour-long video that explains the science of quantum manifestation. It talks about Vladimir Poponin's experiment where he put human DNA into a vacuum along with particles of light, removed the DNA, and the particles of light matched up to the same pattern that the DNA was in. Another experiment worth talking about is the experiments at the Institute of Heart Math that proved that the human heart has a measurable electromagnetic energy field of up to 8 feet away. So I actually have something here that I want to get out because I want everyone to have this working knowledge, because honestly, thank you. This is the biggest platform I've ever had. So thank you for that, Rob.
Of course, we're happy to and very fortunate to have you guys on.
I want everyone to know this, like this little bit, okay? If something paranormal is going to engage with you in your house, to a degree, it has to do so within the laws of physics. We can use that to our advantage. So I'm going to go over just three of the most basic common haunting types you'll encounter, and then I'm going to go over three of the most common styles of protection that you can go over. This will be brief. If you want more, check out my channel. So there's residual hauntings, which Sadhu already spoke on, which is where an event plays on loop. It's like an emotional imprint in the environment, and you hear reports of people walking through the walls, even Gettysburg, where entire armies will walk and replay battles. That's an example of an imprint or a replay haunting. The second type of haunting I want to talk about is a human spirit haunting, and a lot of this comes from older research from Edler and Warren, Tony Spera, a whole bunch of other people that I'm forgetting right now, but I'll give credit to later.
Some legends in the field.
Yeah. Human spirits manifest generally in a three-stage pattern of manifestation, communication, and dissipation. Manifestation is when they draw energy from the environment in order to manifest. So what that looks like is lights flickering, drawing energy from the electricity, cold spots, drawing thermal energy from the environment. Once that happens, there'll be some sort of communication. Something small will be thrown across the room. If you're lucky, you might get a full body apparition or hear a voice, some sort of communication where the human spirit is trying to communicate their plight. After they use up the energy that they stored, they will then move into the final stage, which is dissipation. The third, I know we're going really fast, but I want this out there. The third type of haunting is demonic or dark force entity haunting. They also manifest in three stages. The first stage is infestation. During infestation, they will often pretend to be other types of hauntings. They often take the form of a little girl, or an elderly woman. They'll pretend to be a human spirit or a poltergeist. But the way you can tell anger and terror, they'll feed off these negative emotions in order to manifest to get to the second stage, which is oppression. There are two types of oppression, internal and external. Internal oppression is when they use your own trauma, your own negative memories, and projected voices in order to influence you negatively, impart core images or false memories concocted of your trauma, while at the same time doing big supernatural manifestations. This is the stage that JB is in, and we'll talk more about that later. The third stage is possession, and there's transient and perfect possession. Transient possession is also known as overshadowing. Perfect possession is the final stage when integration happens. We'll go more into that, but all that being said, we have three very basic methods that we use that I call elemental warding. And I call it elemental because we're using physical elements in order to interact with the electromagnetic field of the environment. Now, the work at the Seattle Demon House has shown us that these entities largely use infra and ultrasound, high frequencies and low frequencies outside of human spectrum ranges in order to move things around. We've seen videos online of pearls and drops of water being levitated silently between two standing waves of infrasound and ultrasound. We know the U.S. military uses the frequency of 7 hertz in order for crowd control. It's my contention that these entities use infrasound, ultrasound, and black body radiation or thermal radiation from the infrared spectrum in order to manifest. So that being said, we have to focus our protection at the electromagnetic fields they use. The three ways are water, light, and iron. You can make charged water or holy water by visualizing yourself surrounded in a halo of bright white light, breathing that light in at least 3 times, and seeing that light in your mind's eye flow as you put your finger into a bowl of cold salt water. Flick that water all throughout the haunted area. You can also take a bright LED light, shine it directly at any manifestation that's happening. That will stun the manifestation into demanifestation. That's the same reason natural sunlight works. And the third way is iron. You can use anything made of iron. You can even use a butter knife because the high steel content, steel has a high iron content. And you can pass that iron through any manifestation because these beings are electromagnetic in nature. What happens when you expose iron to electromagnetism? it'll short out. Same thing with these beings, and I'm done.
Well, to expand on that, first off, I want to say the water, because you had some very good examples. First off, the example that you shared of the video of those things levitating in between that those silent frequencies, or is that what it is? Are they frequencies that? So yeah, I watched that, and that was a very neat example. And it really shows that the military using that 7 hertz as a form of crowd control, that there is obvious studied science behind it. The first solution that you gave of water, I thought, was very interesting, because you spoke about how by flicking it, spreading it, the salt water, that it then cuts through the electromagnetic field and then grounds it once it hits the ground. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's what I would like to see applied to JB's case, but we can talk more about that later.
Sure. No, I just when you mentioned the water, I thought that it was important to mention that part, because I think that's.
I'd also like to throw it open to Sadhu because he has some very unique methods, like mantra, singing bowls. Like, do you have anything you want to touch on protection, Sadhu?
Yeah, so in the tradition that I belong to, a lot of what we use is known as kata, and kata is essentially like mantra. It's like chanting, right? And we've heard of like Gregorian chanting and like Hindu mantras and things of this nature, right? So one of the things that is really effective is when you're using certain syllables, or like bij, like root mantras, and you're saying these tones, you're emanating these vibrations vocally, so that has a resonance. And this is kind of adding on to what Aman was saying. So why does the voice have such power when it's chanting? Is it the words themselves? Is it how it's being said? It's all of that. And what I kind of like to do is I like to give like analogies and metaphors, because I find those to be really helpful ways for me to understand things. And so I would give a description of, okay, you're in a room and you have earplugs in your ears protecting you, and you have somebody that's really aggressive, and you release a really, really loud, high pitch, ringing, and it incapacitates them. They kind of fall down to the ground. It hasn't killed them, but they're unable to continue their approach of attacking. So that's kind of the same thing that's being done with some of this kata, is these reverberations of the tone, and the mantra itself has this kind of subduing power that is really effective to the range of frequency that these kind of beings live in, because we need to keep in mind that these things are quasi-physical in nature. And because they're quasi-physical in nature, they do abide by our laws of physics, yes, but there are also certain laws of physics that are kind of malleable for them, because their composition and their chemistry and their genetic makeup, if you will, is different than ours. It's the difference of a spiritual body being able to pass through a solid wall versus us running into the wall, because they are not solid, even though they can interact with our physical world.
And that's a really good point. His point is really worth making. They do bend the laws of physics a bit too.
They bend them, but they're still stuck to adhering to them at the same time, right?
Yeah, at least for the time that they want to interact with us.
Okay.
Think of it as a rainbow. This is actually a really good way of looking at it. So if you're looking at the UV spectrum, okay, and you're looking at the range of what we can see with the limitations of our cones and rods and our optical system that we have in our body, which we know numerous animals on the planet can see a wider range than we can. And that's also why, you'll hear a common explanation of like how animals and stuff, like even, JB's dog tends to react to something and seems very scared, even though he might not see it. The dog can see it, because it sees in a wider scale. So when these things condense to a level of where we can see them, think of that as the got you moment. That means they have condensed their spacious, energetic, electromagnetic, quasi-physical body to such a focalized point to have a specific interaction within our physical plane of existence that at that moment, it is completely adhering to the laws of physics that apply to us because they are choosing to inhabit that level of existence.
And that explains why they only choose to do that at the most opportune times as opposed to being around.
Now we're getting somewhere. Also, another thing that I love this. I love talking about this. Also, another interesting point is think about the amount of electromagnetic conductivity in the air at around 2-3 a.m. That's when most of the dew sets in the morning. That's when the highest water content in the air is. So if these beings use the effects of electromagnetism, maybe they use that time and the natural effects of that time as a medium to cross over. Maybe that's part of it.
That's an interesting theory. I've heard, you always hear 3 a.m. being, I guess, the witching hour or the time that the veil's the thinnest.
Maybe that's part of why.
And to be able to put it, on that grounds and explain it a little bit more scientifically, that's very interesting.
And that's why me and Sadhu work so well together. I tend to go to like the science place and like the very concise meditative place. He tends to go to the more esoteric, but meeting in the middle gets a lot of work done. When you said,
absolutely, I definitely agree. It's like you guys have all your bases covered, and then you can kind of check each other at the same time. I think that that's got to be so beneficial in the research that you guys do.
So yeah, where did you want to go? Because I got my spiel out.
I have those files that you sent when you're explaining the human spirit and dark force entity. I've got them pulled up. If you want, I can share those and kind of show those on the screen, and you can talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Perfect. So I've got the human one. I've got the human one up first. So.
Which one do you have up?
The human spirit evidence.
Okay. All right. I will talk about that right now, everyone.
All right. So let me flip the camera over
Sadhu
here.
Was with me for actually every photo on this slide. Sadhu was with me for. The first 3 were taken at a location in north of Bellingham at an individual's house that was experiencing a very interesting style of haunting. Things were levitating, things were moving. That closet was very unpleasant. And
was that the demon closet?
Yeah, it's the demon closet, bro.
Okay, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so you can see these 3 orbs in different various stages of manifestation. The first bright one, the second blue one, and the third brown one that looks like it sort of has a face. These are all decent orb captures. The 4th picture next to the brown one was taken at a cemetery in Bellingham, Washington. And you can see if you look closely, there are multiple different rings around that orb. So I thought that was a very interesting capture. The final picture on the bottom left, you can see next to my hand the outline of a figure. It's a little vague, but you can see it. It is there. That figure was a human spirit that had drowned in that lake. What you see me reaching into is a lake, and me and Sadhu
you had one of my clay amulets in your hand.
Yeah, we're not going to go too much into details about what happened. Come on now. But okay, we got it to manifest through various means, and it manifested both as this water wraith form as well as this orb. In the final picture in the bottom right, you can see the red orb levitating out of the lake. You remember that, Sadhu? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Did you send him the picture of like when I had my hands up?
No, I kept the really intense ones out of it.
That was the best one. It was like
then you can send it to him, but I'm trying to keep us protected.
That's fair. I mean, I already have those photos out there. But yeah, no, there was a red orb that came out of the lake. And what's really interesting that I have found to be a consistent thread in investigations that we've done, and Aman could probably elaborate on this a little bit more, But anytime there is diabolical, non-human, malevolent entities involved, when they appear in an orb form, which is actually closer to what they truly look like, regardless of what they may present themselves as, they usually take the form of a red orb out of all colors. The next slide.
Okay. So there we've got the Dark Force.
The Dark Force entity slide.
Uh-huh.
I can't see.
Yep. Yeah, I've got the Dark Force entity slide
So
up
the
now.
first thing, so you see the shadow mask in the first picture?
So that's the one with the Christmas tree, correct?
Yep, the Christmas tree and the black shadow mask looming over the Christmas tree.
Certainly, yep.
That phenomena you also see in JD's haunting, but you also see that in honestly any true demonic haunting. If it gets to stage 2, it'll start having this. I've seen this a whole bunch. You can see how the darkness kind of varies. If you look closer to the bottom where it's more condensed, it gets thicker and it becomes slightly more translucent as it goes up, indicating that this is a 3-dimensional manifestation. This particular entity was what is known as an incubus, which is a male demon that attacks a female in a sexual nature. We're not going to get too much into that, but we were able to banish it successfully. I'll make a separate video on that if anyone wants me to. But in the second picture to the right of it, you see what Sadhu was just referring to, which is that red orb. That red orb next to that tree was taken at the same time as multiple other styles of demonic manifestation. I mean, we were hearing voices from the woods. We were hearing growling. We were seeing lights all around us, and we were fortunate enough to capture that red orb independently. And you can see there's nothing else that could be. So that cemetery itself is the subject of an ongoing investigation. The picture below that of the mist that kind of looks like a human head, I'll be honest, it's not the best capture, but I did want to put it in there because it happened.
And this isn't our best phenomena that we have captured.
Right. This is just the examples that I wanted to put out. That mist is taking form. Next to that, you can see an individual's midsection, a female, with multiple scratch marks across her side. That is from those are called psychic flashes, and that is from a demonic entity. The same type of entity that you see in the upper left-hand corner, that type of entity is what created that. In the picture below that,
worth talking about for a second.
Okay, talk about it.
So that was a case where we had a woman that was experiencing like alien hand syndrome, where one of her hands went completely sentient on its own and would attack her. And I mean, it was this just very, very weird and wild case. It would communicate in Japanese with us. It would send us messages in Japanese from her phone.
Wow.
And she never sent those messages.
Where was she from?
And she was from Russia.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And
So
then
really
on top of
no reasonable
we
explanation
had
why it
a
was coming in
video. We have a
Japanese.
video of it where shadows.
They're gonna say next. No, that's literally what comes next. So we're in it. But go ahead.
The shadow. Oh.
No, go ahead and talk about it. Y'all are about to see what he's talking about. So go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, I've got those links
There were
open.
shadows that actually started. You see this dark mass of a shadow in the corner of the ceiling in the room, and then the shadow literally grows. Like it grows and starts coming down the walls.
Yep.
And the shadow is just like warping in and condensing and then like retracting, and expanding and condensing. And,
I've got it pulled up right now for
That wasn't
you.
even the craziest phenomena that occurred on that case.
I've got that shadow pulled up.
Do you see the last picture was taken of a person who was experiencing a very late stage of possession? I've never seen anything like that before, but that's his actual face. That's not a mask. I can't prove it, but I can promise you, based on I'll put my honor on it, that everything I share with you guys is real. I've never faked anything in my life, and I never will. So as you can see below, do you see where it says wall phenomena?
I do.
Do you see that?
Yep, I've got that one preloaded here.
Okay, go ahead and pull that wall phenomena up, and let's and go ahead and show the people. Let me know when it's done, please.
All right, it's rolling now. So, with the black up in the corner.
Yep.
Yep.
So we'll get through that, then we'll explain it.
Okay.
Let me know when it's done.
No problem. You can kind of see where it starts, and it almost looks like an ashy substance at first that then expands.
Right.
Ectoplasmic in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you witnessed this, was this something that was visible to the naked eye as well, or was
Yes.
it? So
Yes, it was.
Wow.
That's why she started filming.
I don't know. I couldn't imagine standing there and just seeing, something like that kind of just growing in the corner. That's
But you hear about it all the time, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a heck of a capture. That's great evidence. Okay, it's complete.
Okay, so Sadhu, since that was your capture, for being super honest, why don't you talk about that?
So when I had first made contact with this woman, she'd reached out to me, and she said that she had had numerous priests, shamans, holy men of every single faith that you could imagine all come and try to help her, and they all gave up. And she was at a point in her life where if she could have taken her life, she would have, except for the fact that she had a little boy, and she didn't want to leave her little boy without a mother. And so she just refused to give up. But this woman was just utterly defeated. The alien hand syndrome was one of the really interesting, aspects of this case, because it isn't just like a medical textbook explanation of alien hand syndrome for anyone that's familiar with that. It was more of like a locked-in integration where the entity was only able to perfectly possess the hand. And so this entity would have her draw sigils. It would have her draw these really horrid pictures that we won't share. That are just very, very graphic.
Wow.
And it would try to choke her. It would slap her. It would hit her. And this was her own hand on her body that was attacking her, and she couldn't stop it.
Well, I remember
so much phenomena that happened.
I remember a movie, and I believe it might have been like a comedy horror movie, but where something, I think it was called Idle Hands, but where something similar to that happened, where it was, and this is just kind of so people can kind of visualize what you're speaking about, but it was exactly what you're saying, where the person had no control over their hand, and it was just basically had a mind of its own.
I mean, it would wave at her.
Oh, wow.
Like she'd be sitting down and it would just lift up and wave at her, like saying hi.
So the next two pieces of evidence are a bit jarring. So I want to leave it up to you whether or not we show the watchers. Obviously, if anyone wants, you can put that in. But the next piece of evidence is a legitimate possession encounter that I was called to assist with. Do you want to show that or not?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think that it's a valid piece of evidence that's important to let people see. So
So keep in mind this is real, and some people laugh at this, but there's nothing funny about it.
Right.
No. I should
So I was called to do a distance clearing with this lady by her son. There was other types of paranormal activity happening in the house simultaneously with this. Things were flying around. Those shadows were on the wall. But there are distant clearing methods that can be applied. It's beyond the scope of this conversation, but it was successful, and that lady was able to be helped, just if anyone was worried about it.
Well, that's good that she was able to be helped. So you were able to do that remotely. It wasn't something where you
Yeah,
had to be.
yes, and I haven't actually talked about this part of it on my channel because I'm trying to keep my channel like as scientific as I can.
Sure.
But
sure.
the truth of the matter is there is a lot of validity in Sadhu Da's path of mysticism and using your energy in such a way, understanding how to tap into the Earth's biomagnetic field and how to, for lack of a better word, how to psychically connect to another individual and help them release an entity from their biomagnetic body.
Okay.
Which is what I did.
Right. I know that in the beginning that you touched on the remote viewing. So I would imagine that the ability
which is also explainable scientifically, but also probably beyond the scope of this.
Right.
The next bit of data is actually, I recommend everyone check out Sadhu Da's channel for a more in-depth exploration of this phenomena. He did a 3-part series on the situation in Connecticut, right?
Yeah. And then my website has a lot of blogs where I go into the science of things, and that's just www.thesadhuda.com.
SADHUDAH, right?
Yeah, thesadhuda.com. Yep.
Right.
Great.
Okay,
I also wanted to take this opportunity to mention, guys, we do have a Discord set up with people that follow along with JB's story. I can send you guys the invite, but if you'd like to share all that information on there, I'm sure that it'd be very beneficial, and we'd all love to check it out. So
we'd be happy to do that.
Great.
So I have to give everyone a warning on this next one. If you're in a negative emotional space, take a 10-minute break from this podcast. Don't listen to this next one if you're in a negative emotional space. That's just a responsibility thing. This is a negative inhuman spirit EVP caught over a landline, and if you're sensitive to it, these vibrations can affect you. I want everyone out there to close their eyes and mentally see themselves surrounded in a halo of brilliant, bright white light, as bright a light as you can imagine. And then you can pause the video, and then once you feel protected, we'll get to it. But Rob, you can go ahead and play that next bit whenever.
All right, great. I'm hitting play now. So
okay, this is actual inhuman spirit phenomenon.
Feel pretty good. I just heard howling from the void. What does that sound like? Okay, this is interesting. I'm a Bakula. What was that? Can you say my name again?
After the tones, you'll hear its voice.
What do you feel about me? Why?
And that's about it, right?
Wow. Yep. That's certainly some
So,
jarring audio.
that was just the clips that I put together for a much more in-depth and better explanation and clearer audio. Check out Sadhu Da's channel. But that was when an inhuman spirit took over the landline. At the end there, you could actually hear it taking a human voice.
It shows the full speaking, like in its voice in the 3-part series I did on my channel.
That was
in fact, I'm literally ashamed of what I put together compared to his. It's way better.
you know, the reverberation there really stood out. It was almost as if you're standing next to, you know, something very high pitched, the way it almost you know, cuts into your ears that way.
But you could hear the voices at the end, right?
Yes. I don't know, I know I certainly could. Hopefully everybody else could, but you know, as Aman mentioned, if you go to Sadhu Dad's channel, that you'll be able to get a clearer, you know, audio sample of what we just listened to.
And the final piece of evidence is from a case that I was involved in Iowa, where a family was experiencing early stage 2 phenomena with cabinets being knocked around the house. So before everyone, I want everyone to keep in mind, when you see paranormal phenomena, I want the first thing you to think about is, how is this happening? So when you see these things start to move in this next video, think about how they're pulsing infrasound frequencies at rapid rates in order to make that happen. So let's start to expand our mind a little bit, but we can play the next one whenever it is ready.
Okay, so I'll pull it up here, and I'm hitting play.
Nothing. At least, no living thing. But then, more rattling and knocking coming from the next room. This time, from a small closet in the wall.
Yeah, I was too scared at that point. I was trying to open up the cubby, being home alone, and that start knocking in the door. I just figured I better not keep teasing it more.
The rattling eventually stops. James and Randy are completely freaked out. Door.
Okay, so it's finished now.
Okay, so what we saw there was the phenomena of door knocking, door rattling, rapping. You hear that all the time. So my belief, and I think we're all on the same page, is that this dark force entity, this demonic style entity, is the main problem that JB is experiencing. This entity type that has all these different styles of phenomena that we just went over. I say that these are a whole new species of beings. These are inorganic predatory beings, which exist in the infrared spectrum, can be measured, and can be directly countered. So do we want to talk a little bit about JB's case?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a perfect segue into it, I think.
Can I add something?
Certainly.
So just to elaborate on that, and from a more Eastern approach, just so you know, we have a whole inclusive kind of thing. So this is a short paragraph. This was something that came to me in a meditation. I feel like it's something that could be kind of valuable as far as an insight of another side of understanding all of this. And that is, what people call mysticism isn't all that mysterious, really. It's just a spectrum of awareness. Through that awareness, we can tap into other realms and dimensions by shifting our perspective on that spectrum. The way of doing that just boils down to learning how the body and mind work. It's not some elaborate secret, and we often overcomplicate things because we approach it as mysticism and magic and not as a spectrum, as awareness that we can direct our focus across. Most people marvel at the paranormal because they don't understand the phenomena. But if your awareness was such that you just saw it as an apple on the table, you would look at it and say, oh, it's just an apple. Further inspection could tell you what kind of apple, how it tastes and feels, and further inspection would tell you where to get more apples or even how to grow them. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. That was
That was actually really profound. I love when this can be expressed in multiple different modalities. I think that's really beneficial and valid.
absolutely. So before we and thank you for sharing that. Before we get into JB's case, I just want to say again where we can find your channels. Sadhu Da is SADHU space DAH. And then Aman Berry, the paranormal investigator, that's the Paranormal College. Is that correct?
Yep, the Paranormal College is my YouTube channel.
Okay.
It's dedicated to empowering the next generation of paranormal investigators to help people in haunted houses.
He shares some great information on there, and Sadhu Da does as well. And then his website is the Sadhu Da. Is that correct?
Yep, the Sadhu Da.
Perfect. All right, so getting into JB's case, well, first off, I want to say, when you're investigating, how often do you find yourself asking questions that you might not necessarily want the answer to? Do you ever ask a question and then say, "Oh crap"?
every you have to ask a 3-year-old if they were touched inappropriately by an entity.
Yeah,
that's one of those days.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to ask those difficult questions, and then it's tough to ask those questions that you might not necessarily want the answer to, but you know you have to ask it. And so,
Exactly.
you know, that's just part of the struggle that you face when you're investigating something. Let alone, you know, if you have something that isn't necessarily wanting to communicate, you find yourself in the tedious cycle of repeating yourself, asking questions. You don't know if you're talking to a wall or if you know, something's going to respond. But the energy expelled is well worth you know, what you get out of it when there are solutions that are came to. So. But yeah, I know in my experiences that I've asked some questions and it's like, well, Rob, do you really want the answer to that question? So,
And sometimes the answer is no, but you need it.
yep,
You know.
absolutely. And then another thing I wanted to share, when you were speaking about the orbs, and you caught that one red one, have you guys ever experienced a phenomena where it almost looks like red sparkles, like the beginning
Yes.
of a manifestation, but it's like rather than like a single orb, it's almost like really small fireflies.
I have actually seen that. Have you, Sadhu?
Yeah, actually, we've documented and caught that on several cases.
Right.
It would be more along the realm of what people would consider to be like nature or fairy type spirits.
Right.
Okay.
Elemental nature.
Sure.
Nature fae.
Yeah, that was going to lead into my next question: is if you have had any experience with elementals, elemental entities, or
Heck yeah.
yeah.
Heck yeah.
I
Not these
imagine-
ones for the most part, honestly.
Well, that's because we're disrespectful of the environment as people. But
Yeah, yeah.
I actually have something case-wise that's perfect for elaboration on that.
I want you to share.
Please.
So I will also be sending you some of these videos and some more pictures for you to privately view. And if you wish to share any of them, just consult with me or Aman first for permission, because some of them are you know, more sensitive.
Certainly. If I do, I would leave it up to you guys to do so on the Discord. That way it's completely in your hands, and then anyone that is in the Discord has chosen to go in there and view it. So that way they're making the choice to do so.
Yeah, perfect. So there was a case where Aman remembers this one. This was actually a very interesting one. So we had, and this is also an interesting riff where we could talk about how sometimes elemental spirits may appear with their phenomena to be demonic type spirits.
Right.
In like a
So-
mimicry sense, or
In the phenomena they induce. So we had this case. I had a friend of mine. She knows what I do, and she had mentioned concern over this. So it was like not like a manhole, but it was like this grated covering, and there was like a water like tube running through it. It was like a city water diverting pipe. I'm not sure what you would call it. I'm sorry.
I guess
But,
a culvert of sorts, or
Yeah.
something.
So
Yep.
it was like a dome, but with little bars over it, like.
Oh, okay.
Basically, a small child could get in, but not an adult.
Right.
And water was running through it, and it was a very narrow pipe. And so this friend of mine approaches me, and she says, "Hey, I'm really concerned about, one of the moms that I hang out with, because her little girl was playing with my son, and her little girl kept going over to this water pipe." And we asked what she was doing, and she said she was talking to her friend, and her friend said that he wanted to play with her, and this was like some like Pennywise It type stuff.
Right, that's what popped in my head. I was like,
so,
oh boy.
So that's what people would generally think, right?
Yeah.
So, the mom's just like, okay, imaginary friend, cute, whatever, and then she's like telling her, like, okay, it's time to go, and so my friend and the mother of the daughter. They go over to get her, and they actually hear a voice saying, "Come down and play. Come down here."
Oh my.
Coming from there. And there's no way an adult could be in there. It's not feasible.
Right.
It can't be. And so we found the location. We were given where it was. We went out there, and not only did we get lots of video documentation and audio of this thing communicating with us from the water.
It was crazy.
It was wild on its own.
It was crazy.
But we were actually able to appease it with offering, and we found that it was not a demonic entity. It was actually a very upset and angry water elemental spirit.
Huh.
And the reason why this water elemental spirit was upset was because this waterway that was running through there actually used to be a natural stream, was then was destroyed, turned into a park and a housing division. And so where the water used to run, they had it going underground in this pipe now.
Oh wow. Basically shutting
Yeah,
it off
in
to the outside environment. Those entities, the elementals, they're ancient, correct? Just
Yeah. Very.
That's quite an experience. It's
as old as the elements themselves when they first were composed from matter, if that helps you figure
Right.
how ancient
Right.
they are.
right.
And not even necessarily on this planet.
Right. That's pretty
And
deep
then
to think
and
about.
Then that opens a whole new can of worms.
Yeah. When you said this,
Like, if y'all out there listening want me to get weird, I'll get weird on that channel. Like, I don't know what y'all want yet.
I you know what? We're completely open to everything. I was just gonna mention, Aman, when I was watching your video, you had some evidence from inside of the home, and then if I remember correctly, you had a photo from the outside above the home. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's on. I believe I did that in my cryptozoology video. Y'all can check that out on my channel. There was some lights in the sky and potential UFO style phenomena above the home, and that brings up to another point. Often, multiple styles of phenomena will coincide with each other, i.e., Bigfoot, electrical storms, UFO sightings.
High-level demonic phenomena tends to have some sort of UFO phenomena, whether, and that's the thing is I don't like that term because
It's a bad term.
Yeah, like people think aliens immediately.
Right.
But like it's an unidentified flying object, right?
Sure.
By definition.
That Russian case, do you remember, Aman? We had UFO activity in that case.
That's what he's referring to. I put that picture out there.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah. Perfect.
That's what he's referring to.
And so there was evidence of a negative haunting in the home, right? That
In fact, that shadow video that you saw was the same house that UFO was above.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was the alien hand syndrome girl case.
Yep.
Wow, it's all kind of balled into one.
So it all ties together. That's what I want everyone to see. The paranormal does not exist in a vacuum.
That's amazing. You
No,
know,
it doesn't.
we've really been treated by all that you guys have shared. I can't thank you enough. I want to say the reason I was so excited to have you guys on and you know to speak with you not only about your experiences but now getting into JB's situation was that you know your proponents of lifting this stigma of you know of being able to share it and people not feeling like they can share their experiences and then you know turning it into education as opposed to entertainment. Yes, we are entertained, but we're entertained by the education we're consuming
I am
here.
the most.
So
I will teach you like a professor. Like like I'm not here to entertain anyone.
yeah, but I mean, personally, I can be entertained by this type of information and soaking this knowledge. So I think it's amazing that you guys are doing what you're doing and that you are sharing it with
that,
us.
don't we?
I certainly do appreciate when people have a vested interest in this, not for the sake of shock value, but because they want to learn.
Mhm.
It's a valid field of scientific study. That's why I call myself the college. This is a serious scientific endeavor that requires serious and brave people to step up to the plate and protect the community with me. So I'm inviting everyone listening to this. Consider if you want to do this. Look at yourself.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for someone to, you know, if they find something that may at first entertain them, that they can, you know, pull some type of passion from, and then, you know, all of a sudden realize the amount of people that they can help from it. It's, you know, it's something that hasn't really been touched, you know, compared to all other aspects of science. I don't think that this one's been explored nearly to the extent that that others
It has
have.
actually.
Well, I mean, it has, but I feel like there's, I guess, in like a mainstream, or it seems like there's a lot more that can that a lot more people that it can be shared with. I guess is what I was touching at there.
Right.
But in saying that, I think that it's important for everyone to know that that you guys in the actions that you perform and the help that you give people, you don't impede on their personal beliefs in doing so.
No.
And
I work with people of all faiths, all religions. We can make Christian holy water, we can make Muslim holy water, we can make atheist holy water, however you want to do this.
Right. So I think that you know, to be able to do that and understand that you need to get to the source of it and you know, and not necessarily force one belief system down the throat of whatever is there. It's like you have to kind of be prepared to pivot and work what you know to what you're dealing with. And I think that you know, coming here on JB's case, that's where we've kind of had problems with finding people to help because it seems like it's always on a one-track mind where you know if I don't believe one certain thing, then you know someone won't be willing to help or thinks that the situation is helpless.
Well, it's not even a matter of pivoting, and I know Aman can attest to this. It is because we are taking a scientific approach, and when you look at the root of the scientific approach, it is not Christian, it is not Muslim, you know, it is not Zoroastrianism, it is none of these things. It is just a simple deductive reasoning of an approach that works and gets results, and that's all we're doing. And if for the comfort of a client, they prefer us to put the lens of their own faith and belief for their benefit, then I have no qualm with that whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, likewise.
And I think we agree that you know the client themselves it all kind of it goes back on their faith in the solution for it to actually you know work to its true potential. Do you kind of agree with that? That
I partially agree, and I partially would make one caveat in that, in my view, I don't leave it to faith. I understand the science of what's going on enough to disrupt the electromagnetic field in a local geomagnetic environment. nothing I'm doing is relying on belief.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. So
There's
that,
no part
I'll
of
add to that.
Yeah.
So I agree with what Aman is saying, but I think the power of faith, not for myself, but for the client, is important if they have that, because what that's going to do is that is going to empower them. That is going to give them
Right.
confidence. That is going to make them feel powerful.
right.
And if I can get that feeling in their body, if I can get them to feel like, they will banish this demon, or they will send this shin, back to where it came from. Like, I don't care what the story is, because the conclusion is all I'm seeking.
Yep.
If we're going to end this story in the same way, then it doesn't matter how we tell it.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think that, I think that it's great that you guys are approaching things that way, and it also widens the amount of people that can be helped from what you're doing. And so it's like,
Right.
it's
We work very differently, but complementary.
uh-huh.
It somehow works.
So, that brings us to JB's case here. Can I ask, how you guys were introduced to the case?
Sure, I'll start because I was the one that introduced it to Sadhu. Okay, I'm gonna be real honest with everyone. Sometimes part of my ritual late at night is I smoke some medicinal marijuana and I watch hauntings live on YouTube. That's just kind of my thing.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
I'm just gonna be really honest. So I was going through this channel. This guy, I think his name is Dark Knight Horror, where
Yep.
he compiles a whole bunch of different haunting clips, and it was like 11 at night, and I was hanging out with my fiance, and I was just watching all these hauntings, and then I came across Dino Nuggs, and I was like, oh, this one looks serious. Like, this one is not just something for me to just entertain myself before bed. This one I actually need to get involved in.
Uh-huh.
So I found my best. I immediately got my mind together, had a cup of coffee, and I wrote an email to Rob saying, hey, I got some resources that might help. And then I was shocked when Rob got back to me. But I was like, you know what? If I have a chance to help this person, I'm 100% on board.
I was grateful to see that email. It was it was absolutely amazing to see, and we've had quite a few people reach out in a very genuine form, and I've connected with a few of them, and we're just grateful for anyone that wants to help. And in this case, after speaking with Aman, for a little bit, I was like, this is an opportunity for us to help JB, and then also to spread this information even larger on the platform that we have. Dark Knight Horror has sent quite a few people our way, so I'm grateful that he gives us the exposure that he does on his channel. And it was my belief that eventually, the right people are going to see it and come our way. So I feel like I feel pretty good about that, and that happening that night when you were watching Dark Knight Horror. So for what it is, thank the medicinal marijuana and the 11 o'clock late night session for that.
I'm gonna be a bit more honest than I thought I was, but I was thinking, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be today, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be on a live, but we should game plan something like a strategy for JB's house.
Absolutely.
Because if we have a strategy, we can get some change happening.
Absolutely, yeah. I think a plan of attack is the absolute best way to go about it. And it was like
that's what we need to do next.
Mm-hmm. And it was like I spoke to you guys, when we were first talking, that trial and error is not an option in my mind with this. No. And when I first started helping JB, it was like, let's not just take suggestions from a comment and give it a try and see what happens, because personally I care about the safety of him and anyone else in his home, and the last thing I want is for that error to not be worth what we were trying. So I think a plan of attack is absolutely the best way. That being said, is there small things that you guys can suggest? I know that I spoke to you about not letting it consume the mind, about keeping trying and keeping a positive mindset, not giving it attention.
I got some great ideas, some simple stuff, and then Sadhu is probably gonna have some stuff to say.
Sure.
But okay, so a Japanese scientist named Dr. Emoto proved that human consciousness can affect water. Just look it up. It's on YouTube for free. Dr. Masaru Emoto. You can look at his work. That he's proven that we can affect water. So what I would recommend to not only JV, but anyone who's experiencing a haunting, and you guys can actually do this, ladies, gentlemen, and however you identify nowadays, whoever's listening can do this with me right now. If you just close your eyes, focus on your heart, and see your body surrounded in a halo of brilliant, bright white light. And just together, we're going to breathe that light deeply into our body 10 times. So I'm going to inhale. Exhale all stress and darkness. Inhale the light. Now, if you've done that with me, you might feel some tingly energy in your body. In your mind's eye, you might feel your body filled with light. You can mentally project that light like you're shining the palm of your hand like a flashlight. On the exhale, mentally direct that light directly at the entity, or direct that light into a bowl of cold salt water, which you can then flick through every area that's haunted. Also, set up strong LED lights. So, like in JP's basement, let's get some floodlights up in there.
Okay.
Let's get some floodlights up in JP's basement. Let's get some floodlights up in the areas where the most activity is happening. Along with floodlights, let's get some iron washers and scatter it across the floor of the basement. Iron, we're going to use washers instead of nails because they're not dangerous.
Right.
We'll get some iron washers, spread it across the bottom of the basement floor. Let's start with floodlights and iron. And maybe when we get a bit more further, we can use water. And if we combine those three, I'm going to be real honest. Me and Sadhu made a gentleman's agreement that I bet $20 that we can cut activity down for 3 days with just the combination of those three. I'm pretty confident we can do some work here, right? So Sadhu, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. So what you're saying is kind of our standard protocol, as you know. And what's interesting, a little behind the scenes talk, is me and Aman talked about one of the techniques that I'm especially fond of, just because of the amount of results I've gotten from it, is the vinegar sea salt bowls. And he says that we're beyond this point for this, but
Go ahead and mention it. Yeah.
where I'm at is I feel like whether or not you're beyond a point of anything, right? Let's say you're in a car and you're about to wreck and you're not wearing a seatbelt, and it's going to be a really bad wreck. If you put on the seatbelt right the moment before you wreck, is it possible that it's not going to last, that you're still going to fly through the windshield anyway? Sure, of course. You didn't put it on to begin with. But is there a chance maybe you get it on and it helps and it does something? Maybe mitigates a little bit of damage? Possible. So that's
Okay, so how do we make those then?
So you take a solution of, basically it's 1 part sea salt and then 1 part vinegar, and then you put that in a bowl, and you'll know it's working because it will crystallize. It'll evaporate and crystallize. And I've tested this in a matter of ways. I had a case where there was very, very low level phenomena, and I mean, it took weeks for the bowls to actually evaporate. And then I've had high level cases, such as this one that JB's experiencing, where the bowl would crystallize within minutes.
Wow.
That's a valid point you're making, actually.
So one, that's also very telling, you know. And then 2, why are we using vinegar and sea salt? Like that's a
very good question to ask. And the reason why is because it short circuits the electromagnetic properties of the manifestation base as it's trying to form. So as this being is trying to condense into our physical reality and interact with us, the acidity of the nature of the sea salt and the vinegar is corrosive to the electromagnetic body of the forming manifestation.
Because it's evaporating in the air.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So the vinegar solution is powerful because it evaporates. And so actually, Sadhu actually changed my opinion. I would say steel washers on the floor, LED floodlights in the basement, and a couple bowls of the salt and vinegar solution in the basement would be a great way to start. Easy to do, takes no mental effort, and if it does work, it tells us something, and if it doesn't work, it also tells us something.
Right. My question is, with something like that, is that something where if it doesn't work, is it going to be a situation where this entity acts out accordingly because you're making attempts at doing it, or will it just either ignore it or it will have an effect on
I
it?
get that all the time. So what we have to, let me take this one just for a little bit because I have it right at the tip of my tongue. What we have to understand is this whole process has to be done in a controlled and overseen manner. So could that happen? Yes. But because you have professionals watching the case very closely, like as soon as something happens, I'll know exactly what that means and what to do.
Right.
So it's not like, yes, that's possible. I would say based on how heavy we're hitting it, it's kind of unlikely. But if that does happen, that just tells us we need to move up one step in our engagement ladder.
Certainly.
That's all it tells us.
Okay. Great. I can't thank you enough for those suggestions, and I know that we'll work with JB and I looking for any type of.
I'd love to. I'd even be willing to have another conversation. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, I'll have JB obviously do those things, but I think it'd be really neat to be able to do a follow up. Speak to you guys a little more publicly live about the progress. We'll keep in touch behind the scenes. But
I want to help JB, and so can you let me know how it goes? Let me know how it plays out.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And I'm sure
I'm invested in this, and I know Sadhu is too.
Yeah.
We're willing to help, right?
I think it would actually, on top of you telling him, these things, it might be very beneficial once this uploads for you to encourage JB to watch him and listen to this episode as well.
Yeah, definitely. I will do so. Hopefully even connect us all together. So we can all talk. Behind the scenes, and I think that he'll trust my suggestion and let him know that this is a safe and right steps to take to fixing his situation and letting him live in a normal life, so to speak, again. So,
and you can give JB my personal cell. I know I've given it to you offline. You can pass that to him if you want to.
Great. Yeah, I'll do that. I appreciate it. So I guess just for the matter of discussing his case a little bit more, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, of course, I want to. I'm here.
He's shared a couple things. And we did kind of touch on this, but I think this is kind of going on my quest to try and understand maybe how or why it may have started, the source of things, because when I first started helping him, it was like, how do you chop down a big tree? Well, you do it, I guess, yeah, I was like, we need to get to the root of things, and when I said a big tree, I thought about it, and I was like, no, Rob, they cut big trees down from the top a little bit at a time. They don't start at the root. So that was a bad analogy. But I guess basically my intentions were to try and figure out exactly, how or why something like this starts with someone. Is there ways that someone can avoid a situation like this. And then in his case, we've spoken about some traumatic situations. There's a few things in his past, including some tougher ones in high school, also including bullying. But then even when he was younger, he mentioned that as a baby, he had I guess, two sides of his family had two different belief systems. Mother was on the Jewish side, and then the other side of the family, as they would go, were Catholic, Christian Catholic, but were going to get him baptized with his mother's approval, saying that way if he wants to make the choice, he can do so in the future. But whenever they would take him as a baby, into these churches to get him baptized, that he would start experiencing very high temperatures, sweating, just like very very bad, to the point where they would have to remove him from the building, and it would go away. So
That's interesting.
yeah, and so that being said, do you think that this is something that was with him, from a young age, or and then maybe built upon?
Why don't you take it first? So, one of the things that comes out is like, okay, I had this case. Aman actually helped me out with this one. The Invisible,
Yeah, look, that one. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
So there was a woman who contacted me through my website who, and I just give a graphic disclaimer right here for anyone that wants to tune out for the next few seconds and not hear this. But by the time she contacted me, she was being physically held down and brutally raped by an invisible force. And it was obviously a very incredibly traumatic situation for her. And she had mentioned to me that, she knew the moment that it first showed up. She had been experiencing this haunting for, was it before we got involved, 5 years a month?
More than that.
More than that?
More than that.
So for several years, she had been affected by this spirit, which you can only imagine, dealing with that on a day-to-day basis for that many years. And she said when it first made itself present and known, she was standing outside. She could recall the very moment. She was standing outside in her backyard. She was smoking a cigarette, and it was snowing, and she saw footsteps in the snow. There was nobody there, but she saw footsteps, and she heard a loud stomp, stomp. And she was startled and very, very confused and was trying to, make sense of it. And then when she went inside and she shut the door, scared, obviously, it followed her inside. And ever since then, she was followed by this spirit and attacked by this spirit.
Actually attacked.
Yeah, actually attacked. And one of the things that I've kind of come to find out from her was, she was like, was this, maybe related to all the times that I go walking around the graveyard at night, because there's a graveyard not too far from where she lives, and it's actually a very beautiful scenery, and she likes to go for walks around it during the daytime. And then, was it possibly her mother who had passed away, and her mother was a very, very negative and just vile woman. And, she was all these things. And I told her, I was like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how this thing came to you. The reality is it's here. It is inconveniencing your life, more than that, actually. And we have methods of approaching it, and we know what we need to do, and that's all we need to focus on. So hearing about what could possibly be the origin with JB, is that plausible? Yes. Have I heard and come across cases similar to that in some way before? Yes. But does it really matter?
Right.
No. What matters is the situation at hand and how we approach it.
Sure.
And at least riddle that question, but that's where I'm at.
Right.
And that's I think that's a fair thing. I think we have to put the questions in order of importance. You know, like, yes, it matters where it came from eventually. So, in regards to your initial question about him burning up at the church, that does indicate some form of attachment.
Right.
So that would indicate that this had an early onset. And at a certain point in JD's healing, I would be more than happy and capable to explore that in various ways. I'm certified in various methods of healing that can help us in that modality. And also, if anyone is interested in that, I'm a Reiki master, hypnotherapist, and massage therapist. Message me off the line for that. But there are ways that you can heal those early childhood attachments. If that was happening, it's likely there was an attachment. That makes me wonder about his parents a little bit. You know, that makes me wonder about where he was exposed to as a youth. What is relevant about the attachment is like how much communication it's had with him his whole life. That part does tell us something.
I want to hear about the Dybbuk box that I saw in one of those videos.
Yeah, so this box was inherited by him when his grandma passed away.
Sorry, I've seen this before.
Yep, and so that was 7 to 8 years ago now, and it was kind of a situation where it started a lot of the bad luck kind of things. He kind of jokes and says, I opened it looking for diamonds and gold, not thinking necessarily about any type of repercussions of opening it. He wasn't aware of any type of trouble that could be caused from it. My understanding, inside the box there was a calendar, a dated calendar. There was a lock of hair, a tooth. So very personal items.
Great. That's a really Dybbuk box. Does he still have the box?
Yes.
We might have to have a conversation about that at a later date.
So sure, certainly. So, I guess where I look at this case, it's like, you have evidence of, a possible attachment from very beginning, but then you have trauma that happened throughout the life, and then now you have this box as well. So it's just, layered one on top of another. And that could kind of explain why everything is so intense now at this moment.
Well, it all makes sense if you look at it in frequency ranges. In order for an entity to influence you, you have to be within its frequency range, its negative frequency range. So it has to have some sort of hook, a depression, an anger problem, a substance problem.
Right.
Also, it has to have something it can hook into. So if we've had these repeated traumas and repeated exposures to the other side, it's kind of the perfect storm for something like this to happen.
Yep. And those are basically like points in your life where you become vulnerable to those type of attachments, right?
The best way I've ever heard it put, and this is by the exorcist named Robert Bruce. He has a great course called The Defense Against the Dark Arts. It's an online course. Check him out. He described this the best I've ever heard, and that is unprocessed trauma is like a shadow that the entities can hide in.
Okay. Wow.
That's the best way I've ever heard it put.
Yeah, absolutely. That puts it into understanding pretty well. It makes a lot of sense for sure. So it sounds like we've got a good setup of how to kind of help subdue things a little bit. Hopefully,
a good start until we can have further discussions. And
right.
Get JB on, but as of this point, let's get our basic protocols in order, and then we'll be in touch with each other, and we'll game plan this like a team. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. I'm super grateful to have you guys working with me. I couldn't be more thankful
we're
for
here
it.
To help, and we're happy to help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about money or fame or anything like that. When it comes to somebody being affected in a negative paranormal situation, the first thought of my mind is, how can I get them to not feel that terror
and that confusion that I felt in my, first major paranormal situation. Like, how can I get them to feel better again?
Right.
And we do.
Absolutely. That's top priority. I agree. The biggest part that we can utilize here with this platform is hopefully be able to help anyone else that that might be watching or looking for something or have that helpless feeling. And we're extending our contact information for anyone that's going through something similar. It's there, and please reach out. Don't feel ashamed to do so.
This is what we'll never call you crazy.
Yeah, never.
This is literally what me and Aman do as our jobs.
You've made it more of a job than I, but it's definitely my life passion.
Yep. Yeah. So, again, I can't thank you guys enough for coming on and chatting with us. I really enjoyed the conversation, and
I did too.
Hopefully, as we make some progress, we can do another live. Hopefully, I'll have the Zoom figured out so we can have us all on video at the same time. And be able to
chronicle this case as it diminishes. We can chronicle that experience.
Absolutely. I think that it'd be really great to be able to share some progress with everyone too, and show them that we're moving in the right direction. Because I think that anyone that views these videos and that follows the channel, they all want the same thing that we want, and that's for this torment to stop. So, I think that it'll be really neat to be able to come back and share some progress, and even speak about possibly different topics along the way too. You guys are well educated and studied in many different things, so I think it'd be silly not to be able to share that information and expose as many people as we can to it, and let them know that it's not like a hidden under wraps thing anymore. It's something that people should feel comfortable talking about, and it's completely okay. So
thank you so much for inviting us on this platform.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you guys for your time tonight. And if you want to text me the links, I'll go ahead and make sure that I put those in the description for everybody, and then I'll share the Discord invite with you guys. I'll put it in the description. And then that way, if you,
as we get off the phone, I'll make sure you.
So is this number
Perfect.
that you shared that we called you on? Is this a good number for me to text you those links to?
Aman
I'll
has
give you the right number.
Yeah, Aman has the right number, so he'll get it to you.
Okay, perfect. Good to know.
All right.
I'll give you the right number as soon as we get off. I'll text it to you.
Sounds
Perfect.
good.
So again, thank you so much, guys. That was Aman Berry, paranormal investigator, his colleague Sadhu. I'll have all their links in the description. And yeah, thanks again, guys, for coming on. I look forward to making some progress in this case, and
We're gonna make progress.
Absolutely, and then being able to chat in the future. It was a great conversation. So
yeah, it was great talking to you as well. Hope everyone out there stays safe, and if you're having paranormal problems, reach out to me. I'll help you out.
Perfect. We'll put all that in the description. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
Yep, you're welcome.
You have a great
Good
evening.
night. Take care.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Thanks, gentlemen. So that'll do it for this evening. Wanted to say thanks for everybody for following along, for all the support. We're working on some progress, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you. I'm going to be having the next couple Sally videos. I'm going to drop those tomorrow. It'll just be a couple of sessions where we were just making some communication. So I'll have a couple that I'll drop for you tomorrow night. So look forward to those. And yeah, thanks for following along. As always, we need to say thanks to Durban Paranormal. Thanks to King Frostmare. Thank you to Dark Knight Horror, obviously. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been connected with these two gentlemen. So, something great came of that. And then, also thanks to Tim. Him and JB are doing the Dark Side of Dino podcast. you know, and you can hear a lot more of the story from JB's mouth there. They do a great job on that. You know, and I can't thank you guys enough for following along. So we'll have more in the future, and look out for those Sally videos tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.